I don't work with couples. I help one person at a time save their relationship. It only takes one person to be a hero in a relationship. Welcome back to We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. Today, we've got a very exciting episode, and I am not going to take up time with a long intro. I am here with my good friend, Robert Mack, for a very special Ask Me Anything Men's Edition, where my guy followers get to have my undivided attention as we tackle their biggest questions about dating, sex, relationships, and mental health. Robert Mack, welcome back to We Need to Talk, and thank you so much for co-hosting this episode with me. You're my first male co-host.
Wow, I feel so special, Darcy, but I always feel special when I'm connecting with you. So thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I am so excited for today. All right, so we have gotten several questions from our male followers.
First question is, how do I know if my relationship is over or just in a rough patch?
So to me, it's not about how much you fight, because fighting is so normal in long-term relationships. What really matters to me is, how are you both showing up? Is there still intermittent respect when you guys show up for each other? And are either of you willing to repair after conflict? It's not unusual for one of you guys to be less open to acknowledging that you did something wrong or acknowledging your role in the problem. I'm not overly concerned about that, but I need one of you to be open to repairing after conflict. If those are gone, that's when I really start to worry. And a rough patch usually comes from situational stress, unlike concerns that it might be over. So a rough patch to me looks like new life events, a new baby, work stress, big changes. You'll see some warmth, even though both people are under tremendous stress in those situations. You'll see occasional inside jokes, small moments of connection, little repair attempts that sometimes land. But when it's leaning towards over, you see things like indifference. Your partner stops caring enough to fight. Basically, there's like very little good to bad ratio. It's kind of all bad all the time. And for me, the biggest flag that it may be over is if there is zero willingness to get help or to change on either partner's end. The bottom line is that one of you guys has to be willing to do something different, even if all you're willing to do is find a therapist. If neither of you is willing to budge, that is usually the end. But the good news is that you don't both have to be excited or enthusiastic about going to couples counseling. Steph, my wife, as you know, Robert, is a couples therapist, and she tells me that there is always a pusher and a draggy in couples therapy when people go to couples. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, because when you're with the right therapist and change then begins to happen, the draggy becomes more motivated and better engaged in therapy. And by the way, if you're willing, if like the person I'm speaking to, my listener, if you are willing to go to therapy and your partner is not, that can work too. My entire practice is teaching relationship skills to individuals. I don't work with couples. I help one person at a time save their relationship. It only takes one person to be a hero in a relationship.
That was good, Darcy. I think you just read my mind, so much of that. And you said it so beautifully. I agree. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind are the Gottmans, right? So they're the experts in this space. And I think about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And you sort of outlined those there. The worst of which is contempt, right? So criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, not great signs, none of those are great signs. But contempt is the one you really want to be concerned about. So contempt differs from criticism because contempt is an attack on a person's character, right? So if you're seeing or experiencing or the one that is attacking the other's character, that's a pretty good sign that things are not heading in a good direction and they probably won't be repairable. Not that you can't repair it, but it's just the likelihood isn't all that great. So I'd say, first of all, look out for those four horsemen of the apocalypse. And so to your point, it's not if you fight, everybody fights. I hate fighting. I'd like to avoid fights at all costs.
Same.
But it's not about if you fight, but how you fight and how long you fight. So if you're fighting with defensiveness and stonewalling, criticism and contempt, that's a problem. And also how long you fight. So to your point, if you're going through a transitional period, of course, you're going to go through a rough patch and it's just a phase, no big deal. But if you find that there's always something that you're using as an excuse to fight, then that's more deeply problematic. The other thing you said, which I also agree with, is positivity ratio, right? So for a relationship to survive, really for an individual to survive, but for a relationship to survive, you need at least 5 positive interactions for every 1 negative interaction. That's just to survive. So if you want to thrive as a couple, you need something above that, ideally 7 or 8 or 9, or I think Barbara Fredrickson, whose theory this sort of revolves around, would say probably 12 to 1, sometimes as many as 17 to 1. So that's another good sign. The other thing that you said that I also happen to agree with, and I promise I won't agree with everything that you say, I'm sure, but it's
Remains to be seen.
Yes, remains to be seen.
If I know you.
TBD, TBD. The other one is just whether or not, ideally both of you are working on the relationship and or yourselves. I'd say if only one person is working on the relationship and or themselves, it's probably not a great sign either. So yeah, for the most part, what Darcy said, what she said. But yeah, the Gottmans, I'd say, are probably the experts in this space in addition to Dr. Darcy. And if you're noticing any of those signs that I just mentioned, you probably want to do a deeper dive there.
And I am going to just push back on a couple of points that you said, or just clarify. I'm going to finesse a little bit. So with contempt, it doesn't necessarily have to be just I'm assassinating Robert's character. I can approach him with energy where he gets the felt sense that I think I'm better than him. I can speak down to him with a tonality and with body language without actually assassinating his character or calling him names or, using profanity in a negative way. I can't not use profanity unless I'm mad. When I'm really mad, I don't curse. That's when I'm really, really upset because I don't use it. The F-bombs just flow from me in a natural state, but not when I'm angry. I'm careful. I'm measured. So contempt doesn't just have to be the words you say. It's the way in which you engage with the individual. You don't actually have to say you think you're better than your partner or your partner thinks they're better than you. They come to you and they speak to you in a diminishing tone.
And the challenge with that is that, so we often talk about self-concept theory, right? So the challenge with that is that I might receive or experience someone as being condescending, but another person might not experience that same person as being condescending. So this is hard to quantify. It's extraordinarily hard to quantify.
Totally
and it's extraordinarily subjective. So in the moment, often, just because someone's having an argument with you at all, or you feel something at all that has something or nothing at all to do with that person, that's going to all color the way in which you receive what they're saying and sharing. And so, and if you have a negative self-concept, you're going to tend to experience people in ways that confirms that negative self-concept. If you tend to feel weaker than folks, if you tend to feel that folks are insensitive in general and that you have, so yes, absolutely true. It's the energy and the way in which you say things. And on the other hand, hard to quantify. So be careful of assuming the person's being condescending just because you're feeling like they're being condescending, right?
Totally. And to that point, if you are receiving your partner as if they're speaking to you and feeling contempt, that felt sense is going to cause you to engage differently with your partner. So it still has to be addressed in a professional setting. If you have that felt sense, you're going to unintentionally or intentionally react and respond to your partner in ways that don't serve the relationship. So even though it's really hard and it's very subjective, it's hard to define what exactly contempt is because it is an essence about a human being. Even if the person is just feeling that way subjectively, it has to be addressed because it's going to rot the relationship.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely.
And I also just want to say, while these may be indications that it might be over, I think it is rare that I tell somebody, I only work with individuals. They come to me with relationship problems. It is so rare that I say, I don't see a way out. I don't see a way out. And I have to sweat so much in sessions with someone to get to that place. And that person has to really try and consistently try. I mean, we are trying different things, different ways, and almost always I can find a path through for someone. It's rare that I can't, but I do sometimes. Sometimes I land there.
That's inspiring. I love that, Darcy. I think as we're in an age where most folks are probably over-indexed in the other direction, right? On giving up too soon, too early. Now, that doesn't apply
100%.
for everyone, obviously, universally, but I would just say, we're in an age where relationships and people feel increasingly disposable and
Hmm.
transactional and it's kind of acquisitive. So it's important to recognize that too. Like, check yourself. Is your tendency in relationships to sort of cut bait and run, right?
Hmm.
Or do you tend to be on the other extreme where you stay too long? Because
Yep.
that'll also tell you, like, okay, it's been 5 years and my tendency is to stay too long. So I'm probably over indexed for, unhappiness in a way that I don't need to be. So anyway, that's important little uh, insight to share as well.
I agree. And listen, long-term relationships are rough. They are rough. There will be years where you dislike your partner. Okay? If you are going to measure it across decades, there will be years. I feel like I'm telling people Santa doesn't exist,
Mm.
which I actually did as a Jew in my school in fourth grade.
Yeah.
And I wondered why I had no friends. Um,
It's a very Darcy story. That's
but I
great.
do,
Let's do that.
but I do need to be transparent. I'm not going to show you my fights with my wife. And thankfully, we are in a really good place and a very hopeful place right now. But there have been years where I have actively disliked her, actively questioned the relationship, but I kept fighting and I came through. Michelle Obama said that she hated Barack for a decade. I mean, we have to be more transparent about how hard long term relationships are. They're not for the faint hearted.
Truth. That's true. There's something else that you highlight there that I remember from the research as well, which is like the value of positive illusions, right? So that like the happiest couples are often characterized by usually one or both partners seeing the other as good as or better than that person's five best friends, right? So yes, right. So if Darcy and I are in a relationship, then and it was a healthy, happy relationship, despite the things that we had going on, I would still see her even better than her five best friends. So they'd say
That's
wonderful, lovely things.
amazing.
Yes, right. Yeah. So that's a pretty good indication too. Like, if you're not experiencing that, not a great sign, not the worst sign. But if you are experiencing that, if you still see this person better than their five best friends, then, and ideally they'd be seeing you that way too, better,
I mean,
better than
but
your five best friends.
this person writing this in is not seeing his partner that way, nor is she
That's right.
seeing him that way. And I think that we need to, in an ideal world, when you get out of the questioning the relationship, when you're in a place of healing, to aim to thrive, you can aim for that as like a
Yes.
goal in mind. But if you're questioning the relationship, man, that is just very high hanging fruit. That's the top of the tree.
Mm.
And nobody, I don't think anybody's going to feel that way.
Well, there should be a corollary to that, right? Which is that if you see your partner worse than their five worst enemies, that's when you know you're in trouble. That's probably a
I,
corollary there
I I think
somewhere.
that's probably I think that's
Well,
probably fair. That's probably fair.
all right. One other thing I was going to add, and this is also a little tough to sometimes suss out, um, independent happiness, right? So, you know, uh, there's been times in my life I've been in challenging relationships, and I've often asked myself, would I be, have I been happier alone? I've been happier by myself. Now, I don't know how you feel about that, though, Darcy. Is that a measuring stick that people could use or should use? I think that I've noticed a lot of folks in relationships stay in a relationship because they're afraid of being lonely, for instance,
Hmm.
right? Other folks stay in it because they're afraid they won't meet anyone else who's better or is a better match for them, maybe. Also perfectly understandable. But I think that in my experience, the cause of most unhappy relationships are two people who aren't or weren't independently happy before they entered in the relationship. And so that relationship becomes the source of their happiness, right? The
Yeah.
other person becomes the source. And all of a sudden, they don't find happiness anywhere else. They then blame their partner for their unhappiness, not realizing all the while they're just an unhappy person. They were from the
Yeah.
jump, but there's a little honeymoon phase where they sort of forget that for a while. But I don't know if that lines up with any of your experience there.
I think that's fair. I had never thought about that. I think that's a good point. Yeah.
All right. Question number 2.
Yeah.
All right. Why does my wife seem to lose interest in sex? Boy.
Desire changes over time, especially in long-term relationships. There's stress, there's kids, there's hormones, there are resentments that result from disagreements that were never properly repaired. And feeling emotionally disconnected all play a role. For women, emotional intimacy is the fuel for sexual intimacy. If they feel unseen, unheard, or overextended, desire is going to tank. So it's less about losing interest in sex and more about the conditions that make desire possible. What is your experience?
Wow, that's great. I just feel like this is a question that is really meant for you to answer. I don't know because I've never been a woman as far as I know. I love what you said there because I do agree that there are lots of reasons for it, right? To your point, it could be psychological, emotional, physical or physiological or biological, right? And those are just a few possibilities. Certainly stress. So in my experience, certainly stress, definitely a lack of emotional like intimacy, and or feeling safe. The other piece of it, and this is where I think Esther Perel speaks so eloquently, on one hand, the things that feed desire starve love, and the things that feed
Yes.
love tend to starve
Yes.
desire, right? So,
Yes.
as guys, we don't always clearly understand that. Like, yes, it's really important to provide a place of psychological and emotional and relational and even financial stability and security and predictability. That's great for love. And on the other hand, it's terrible for desire if you do too much of it. It's boring. You need some novelty and mystery and unpredictability and insecurity
Yep.
and instability, but not in ways that are threatening, right, or
To the
unsafe.
relationship, right?
Yes. So I think a lot of times, the reason that, women could possibly lose interest in sex is because, we are over-indexed in one direction or the other. It's like so
Yeah.
chaotic, or it's just so predictable. It's like, oh, this is so boring yet again.
Right. You have to, I don't know where it falls in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You probably do, though. You're such a dork, Robert.
It takes one to know one.
Astounds me. Okay, for sure. But it astounds me how much you retain. I have learned every fact that you have learned, probably, but I have to hear it 100 times to memorize it. And I have not learned each fact 100 times, but you retain things at a level that is just astounding.
Well, I'm a child. So I have less tabs open in my browser brain. Like, Darcy, you're a grown adult, so it's like you have real responsibilities and a real house and all these things. But I appreciate you saying that. But my experience of you is just the opposite. I'm blown away by the things that you retain. But yeah, I think
Thanks.
part of it is that you're welcome. It's deserved. But also part of it is I have so much passion around this like you do, right? So it's easy to retain things that you have passion around and that are personally relevant. So,
I hear
if you've
that.
had the experience, it's like, okay, I better remember this so I don't, make the same mistake next time or whatever.
Yeah. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this outline, this graph of the needs that a human being is going to have depending on, and they start with the most basic ones. The most basic needs are food, shelter, what else? I think that's it. And safety, food, shelter, and safety. And so if those things aren't handled, and keep in mind, if you're privileged and living in a relatively safe place, the equivalent of those would be, so if we're talking food safety and shelter, job insecurity. It totally tanks that basic foundational level of, and I'm butchering this. I don't remember what the hell Maslow's hierarchy of needs are, but I know like the most basic things are we need to be able to survive. So if there's economic uncertainty, if there's job uncertainty, if there's housing uncertainty because the job market is crazy, all of these things are going to impact whether or not the person goes up a rung at the next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'll put it in the show notes. You guys will be able to read it yourselves and make better sense of it than I'm able to articulate it here. But I'm pretty sure that sex comes at least one rung up from, safety and security. So if we're living in very uncertain times, everyone's anxiety heightens, and we're not super plugged into desire and sexual in uncertainty. Is that
You nailed
your
that. That's beautiful.
experience?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there's just one little asterisk caveat to. So I don't know. I read this very interesting book called "Come as You Are" by Emily Nagoski, I think her name is.
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Oh my God. Yeah. And she just sort of like described, like all women as either gas pedals or brakes, essentially. So, in other words, with some women, stress and anxiety gets in the way of feeling connection and intimacy, particularly sex. And for other women, stress and anxiety actually
It's an
increases.
outlet.
Yes, it's an outlet.
Sex
That's
is the
right.
outlet. Yes. And sometimes there's an incompatibility.
Right. So what about that, Darcy? What do you do about that?
I mean, you get a vibrator. If you're a woman, you get some really good vibrators. And if you're a guy, hopefully, you're ambidextrous so you don't get the carpal. I mean, you got to take care of it yourself. And then I think that there's a level of, look, if you know that your partner does not use sex as a coping mechanism for stress, the way some of us do, and instead needs levels of certainty and safety, which most women do require to have desire, there are different ways of creating that certainty and safety. So if we're living in fucked up times, hypothetically saying, then you want to, if you're a guy, there are ways to you make your woman feel safe. Let her know that she is not alone in the world, that you are there with her, and that she is not alone. She has a partner, and that you guys are a team that will survive and thrive, and you will get through this. And she just may need a little bit more of that emotional intimacy, that reassurance, eye contact, touch, platonic touch, like not sexual touch, like touching her to make sure she's fully engaged so that it's resonating with her. If her life is spiraling, peripherally, if there's too many tasks for her to complete and you're like, gee, why aren't you the nymph that I married? Well, then maybe you can help by helping out with some of those tasks and saying, you know what? Why don't you have a night off tonight? Even though it's exhausting to come home from work and take care of the house and take care of the kids. I'm speaking to you, men. Maybe you work out a night or two if she's the primary caregiver or the one who's primarily responsible for housework, and she gets stressed out by chaos, visible chaos and physical chaos in her environment. Maybe you work out a way of saying, 2 nights a week, when I get home, you get to do whatever you want. You want to watch TV, you want to take a bath, you want to work out, you want to go out with your friends, do whatever you want. I come home, I'm going to handle this. You are giving her a reprieve from stress that might be just what she needs to build up her desire again. And let me tell you, gratitude is quite the aphrodisiac.
That's big. I love that one. That totally resonates. You are highlighting something here. I think it's important. I remember Esther Perel at some point saying, generally speaking, unless there's something going on within like the pharmacy of the woman's body, generally women don't lose interest in sex permanently. There might be phases where your libido is a little higher, a little lower. But if a woman loses interest in sex with you, it's generally something that you positively have the power to do something about,
That
right?
was so well phrased.
Yeah.
Look how you did that.
Yeah. Trying to empower my brothers out there. So,
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize that, it's don't assume that because she's not interested in sex with you, that she's not interested in sex at all, or that she won't ever
Right.
be again. she can be again, more than likely, unless again there's something going on physiologically or physically or biologically or whatnot. And so you do have the power and ability to influence that in positive directions. And I think gratitude and presence is a great place to
Mhm.
start. Yeah.
And knowing her stress points. Ask about the stress points. Ask about the things that stress her out the most, and then use your amazing problem solving brain, which men are so good at. Find creative ways to bridge the gap between where she is and diminishing that stress a little bit, which could very well increase her desire. And if you're wondering whether it's you, because everyone's going to say it's not you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a kind person, you're going to say it's not you. You got to ask her if she masturbates.
Right.
If she masturbates, then you know that it's something happening in her world. She still has a sex drive, right?
Mhm.
She's actually still having sex just with herself. So that's a clue that then it's within you could potentially be part of the solution to that problem.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So just to that point, quick sidebar. Have you ever seen the movie Like Anything Else? It's a Woody Allen
No,
movie with Christina Ricci and
no.
Jason. Oh, wow. There's a whole scene in the movie. I'll keep it brief, but they're having relationship issues, you know? And so at some point, Christina Ricci, I don't know, she's out and about somewhere and he can't find her. He's looking for her. Anyway, he eventually finds her and then she comes back and he says, "Hey, what's going on? Where were you? I couldn't find you and everything." And she said, "Oh, remember how we were having issues and we weren't sure if I had a real problem, like, with intimacy and whether I didn't know even if I could have an orgasm again." And he's like, "Yeah, I remember that." She's like, "Well, I met a guy." And he's like, "You did? You met a guy?" And she's like, "Well, listen, it's good news. Guess what? I can have an orgasm." So just a reminder to all men, you can do something about it. You have the power to influence it for the better, in a way that's positive. And I love everything you said there, Darcy. 100%. Like listening, not fixing. Just listen. Just listen can be powerful, and mirroring back or reflecting back what you heard her say without fixing, which is really tough because we all go to our logical brain and we want to be helpful, and we're used to being helpful by fixing stuff. That was what we did as kids and what we do as adults sometimes.
Now we just gave them conflicting advice because I told them to try and fix and you told them to just listen.
Ah,
So those are two paths. Try both.
yeah.
I would try Robert's path first because women are
Mm.
notoriously annoyed by their partners trying to fix. By the fucking way, if ever I express a complaint, it is a red carpet for someone to help fix it.
Mhm.
Red carpet invitation. I don't understand complaining for the sake of complaining. I rarely feel better after complaining. I feel better after I have a plan of action to fix the problem before me. But as Robert said, women are notoriously annoyed by fixers. Um, and so try listening first. And then, because you need to know what the stress points are before you can even fix them.
Right.
And when she's done talking, maybe then you can ask, here's a dialectical approach. You can use both of our paths. Then, after she's done explaining what the stress points are, you can ask her, would you like help with any of those?
Mm.
If I had a magic wand, would you want me to make any of those better? And if she says yes, then that's the green light for my path.
That's
Use your
great.
problem solving brain to figure that out.
I know yet another reason why you and I connect, Darcy, because it's true. You're not a complainer. Like, if you're sharing something, it's because you're open to having help or support fixing it. And I love that point you're making, which is a really important one. I think just to underscore real quickly is like, yeah, it's like kind of what would be most helpful, honey? Do you want to be heard? Do you want a hug? Or do you want to be helped? Right? Like, do you want me
Yep.
to help problem solve? So great call. Love that. I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you asked me just before we hit record, how you doing, Darce? And I was like, oh, we don't have time for this. Darcy's had a rough week. There's nothing you can do about it. And I've already talked about it to the people that can fix it. And they say they're fixing it. I'm in the middle of a bureaucratic mess, but I'm powering through, brother.
All right, we're gonna sidebar. We're gonna talk about that one offline. I want to hear about
We
that
don't
actually.
have to. I've because it's
Oh,
not going to make me feel any
oh,
better.
okay, fair
It's not.
enough.
Let me let you in on the good stuff going on in my life when we're done, or maybe in
Fair.
the middle of it. However it most naturally presents.
Love it.
I don't just talk about mental health. I live it. And in my 20s, I built a boutique private practice that reflects the kind of therapy I always needed. It's called Alternatives Counseling, and we are now accepting new clients. If you've ever listened to this podcast and thought, I wish I had someone to walk me through this in real life, that is exactly what we do. We work with individuals and couples, especially high achievers, who are killing it in their careers and want that same success in their personal lives. We help you build deeper, healthier connections without losing yourself in the process. This is evidence-based therapy delivered by licensed therapists who are the best of the best. Change is hard. Doing it alone is harder. Come do the work with us at alternativescounseling.com.
All right, next question. What are women really looking for in men over 50?
So when you're over 50, it's less about stuff and more about substance. So confidence, emotional maturity, reliability, humor, health, and someone who can truly partner in life. Women are often looking for stability and connection, not perfection. They are also looking for someone who can provide, which does not necessarily mean that you have to be rolling in money. But if you are not, your acts of service, i.e., your willingness to get off your ass and help with things around the home, help make your partner's life easier by looking for stress points and offering help. Like I said before, those go a very long way. So again, you do not have to have a black card to be an attractive, valuable partner. But what you do need is a willing spirit to help with things and to add value to the relationship. And I would argue that we are all hoping that our partners also continue to bring novelty and excitement to the relationship because, like you said before, that is the essence of what turns us on. And, of course, we all need it to differing degrees depending on the person. Or maybe that's just me broadcasting my desire for Steph to continue to bring spontaneity into the relationship. But I think that the emphasis on things and stuff diminishes in your 50s. And it's more about the quality of the human that you are. But you tell me, Robert.
No, that resonates with me. You're absolutely right. I think it's support, significance, and probably stability, right? Like consistency. I think that ideally, when we all reach 50, and beyond, I think that all of the things that we might have initially experienced as exciting in our 20s and 30s and even 40s suddenly are no longer exciting, right? So it's like the ups and downs in a relationship where you don't know where the person, where you stand in the relationship, where they stand in the relationship, the sort of the arguments that come out of nowhere, right? So all the emotional dysregulation and even the moments of lack of empathy and all that stuff. I think that is something that this point in your life, you're hoping
Yes.
are no longer
Representing
problems.
right here.
Yes. Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Totally hoping that these are no longer issues. And you bring, you're so much more valuable if you know. So for those things not to be a problem, you have to know yourself. It is imperative in your 50s to get to know yourself if you have not already. And, to be able to walk somebody around your idiosyncrasies / your craziness. We all have ways in which we're pains in the asses to love and to live with. Everybody does. If you know the ways in which previous partners have had the same complaints, the ways in which people you know and love have either softly or jokingly commented on or have literally said, dude, that is really annoying when that happens. You need to know that about yourself. And more importantly, you need to know how to walk somebody around, give them the workaround for that. So it's not enough to just know, hey, Robert, I don't like it when you curse. It's, Here's what you can do instead of cursing. When you need to emphasize a point, you could just touch my hand. And if we're not together, you can write in caps the word that you want to pop for me.
Oh, wow, this was so great, this way you summed it up. So I heard three things, at least more than that, but three things that really deeply resonated with me. One, groundedness, just being grounded. I hear that piece, like kind of being sort of solid or solidified and sort of on one hand in who you are, like rooted in yourself. There's a deep rootedness I hear in both of you, right? The second one is gratitude. And by that, I mostly mean that, when you're younger, you fall in love with your own ideas or image of the other person and not always the other person. I mean, I remember even falling in love with the idea of love. And then, you just put people, slide people in,
Yes.
in there, right? So ideally, we let that go. So we're falling in love with the person as they are, not as we hope them to be or pray that they'll
Yeah.
be or think they should be. So there's that. It's sort of gratitude for who they are. And then the third piece, though, sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually a compliment. It complements the other two, which is a growth mindset. Those are the three things that stick out for me is that, you're each, ideally, they're looking for a guy, I would imagine too, that is grounded, that
Hmm.
is grateful in a way that is focused on the person in front of them, not the image they have in their head. And then third is receptive to feedback and or slightly or seriously coachable in some ways, right? So it's both those things, or it's at least learning. You don't have to change who you are to connect with women or to connect with anyone, but it helps if you can be flexible cognitively and behaviorally.
I think I totally agree with that. The number of people who don't know how to walk their partners around their unique character traits, likes and dislikes, astounds me and frightens me. By our 50s, we need to be figuring ourselves out. Every failed relationship is not the fault of the ex. We have to get a grip on that by the time we're in our 50s. And we have to be able to, our partner doesn't know our history, doesn't know our triggers, doesn't know our wounds, doesn't know our preferences. You've got to be able to guide your partner around you and your needs. You need to know what you need and you need to know how to articulate them.
Oh,
That's what we need in
awesome.
our 50s, more than anything, more than the black card.
Mm. It's good. It's good news for most of us. Love that. Okay, ready for the next question?
Yes, sir.
Is online dating even worth it for men over 40? Hmm.
I mean, absolutely. I love it when people phrase their decade as if it's old. That
Right,
is that, do you know what I mean?
So true.
For
So true.
people over 40, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Listen, dating apps are amazing. They open an entire world of options. I'm not saying that it comes without friction, but over focusing on the friction, um, it would be like over focusing on the friction points of the internet because there are aspects of it that suck and not using it because of that. You would be limiting yourself to life in the 1990s without the internet. And the internet comes with a lot of downsides. I don't think so. You have to be on the dating apps, gentlemen. You simply do. You have to be on the dating apps unless you're wealthy enough to hire a matchmaker or a service. You have to be on the dating apps because I don't even think women expect to be hit on in public anymore. I mean, certainly not with the frequency that they used to. I don't know about you, Robert, but I go out and I do not see people mingling the way they used to. I see people huddled with the people that they came in with. I'm curious, what do you see people
I,
approaching strangers
I,
in bars?
I do because I'm one of them.
Well, but you're also in Miami.
That's
You're
true.
also in
That's true.
Miami.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Miami is um, represents no other city, I would say, certainly in the States, maybe in the world in that way. Completely agree with you. And you're also right, like dating apps can be a phenomenal tool. Now, it's not they don't come with problems, right? So, yes, experiences on dating apps can be more transactional, more acquisitive. You can feel that you're disposable, but then you also begin to see other people that way a little. It's like, oh, just swipe again, it's fine. Just like, and there's a bit of an illusion of infinite choices that are available to you. right? If you just keep swiping kind of thing. And, the whole point, and I know that app creators would, disagree with me, but to some extent, apps aren't meant to be deleted. I mean,
No,
that's not really the business model. It
no,
would really make
I'm
you the most amount of
sorry.
money. It'd be the one that kept you on there and kept you
I'm
upgrading
sorry.
your
Yeah.
subscription plan, right? So I think it's a great tool. It's just not the ultimate solution. And by that, I mean, you might find the love of your life and be done. A lot of people do. In fact, I heard more people
Many
do now
people
than
do.
ever, right?
Yep.
On the other hand, I would strongly encourage folks to not let dating apps become a crutch in such a way that you let your communication skills and your social skills atrophy. Because I see this consistently. Like, people meet people on apps and then they go on dates and then the dates don't work out and they go back on the app and they meet somebody else, match with somebody else and they go on another date. Or they're just out and about and they see some beautiful, in this case, woman. I guess we're talking mostly about, straight guys looking for women. They see some beautiful woman in the elevator or the grocery store and they don't have the confidence or the courage or the emotional intelligence or social awareness or
I
intelligence to
see.
approach her in a way that's respectful
Yeah.
and kind, doesn't make her feel threatening or threatened, but at the same time is fun and kind of flirty, right? Like that's kind of like becoming an increasingly lost skill set and mindset.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect complement to real life. It's no substitute for real life. It can complement your real life, in powerful ways if you use it effectively. But there is a way to use it effectively. And I would say, absolutely. Why not use a tool that's readily available, often free for most folks? And at the same time, don't let it replace real life experiences.
And I would add to that, you have to use it strategically. Success on a dating app depends on effort. You have to be able to communicate clearly about what you're looking for, and you have to be resilient. You
Mm,
have to be able to bounce back from rejection, and you have to be able to bounce back from the first, second, and 100th lame first date. Apps can feel so discouraging in so much as, because there are so many options, you are having a rinse and repeat. When people lived in small areas and only had access to 6 or 10 or 20 single people at one time, they adjusted their expectations,
mm.
right? But the dating apps open up such a belief and an illusion, and oftentimes in choice. And I can talk about why I'm calling it illusion. I'm curious why you were calling it an illusion, Robert.
Yeah.
But they opens up so many options. And so you're going to go on more first dates, and everything is a numbers game. You're going to get rejected more. You're going to have shittier first dates, more shitty first dates on a dating app. But just like every tool that can feel limiting and discouraging, it doesn't mean that it's useless, because they expand your reach. And the vast majority of single people are on dating apps, period, the end.
Facts. I agree with all of that. And I'll add to that. What works in real life does not work well on the apps, and what works on apps does not work well in real life. So, like, a simple thing like this, right? So in real life, clever, witty, flirty comments can come across, can land really well, especially if it's like calibrated, properly for the city and for the person and all that stuff. But on the app, you've got to be careful, because I noticed that lots of my clients, like the guys, they, on one hand, either over-index for brevity.
Hotness.
Yeah, well, that too, for sure. The bathroom selfies and all that stuff. But there's a whole science. There's an art and science to getting your profile right and to messaging folks and DMing folks over apps like properly in a way that's effective. And so, for instance, like one of the things that I didn't know that I learned over a period of time is like what works in real life doesn't work on the app. So a good example is if you just say hi to somebody in real life, yeah, that's a good start. But you think as a guy, you mostly know you're gonna have to do more than that. On the app,
Yeah.
most undefeated introduction you could possibly make is just hi or hi and their name. And I have a lot of guys that will go in right away and they'll write like a lot, something clever and witty and funny. And occasionally they might work a little bit, but more often than not, it's just too much, too fast on an app for most people. Right. The other thing is,
but I
right,
think there's
yeah.
a happy medium, Robert, because
Yes.
like when somebody writes SUP, my
That doesn't
female
work.
clients are not fucking responding to that, and my male
Agreed.
clients are not doing that.
Agreed.
You gotta read We should do a whole episode
There isn't
on
a whole episode of this.
how to properly set up your dating profile and how to properly engage with your dating app. Because as a former global ambassador to Tinder, I was trained in what works and what doesn't. So I am happy to share that with our listeners. And I would love for you to do that episode with me if you care
Oh,
to.
I do. I do.
Because I agree with you. You cannot fire hose a human being with too much. Like, the people get scared, you guys, if you've read their profile too intently and you comment too much on stuff.
Yes.
It brings up concerns. It can feel stalky.
Ooh,
And that feels so unfair. And I'm just going to say that right now. It does feel unfair. But like any good ingredient, you just have to use the right amount. The difference between a medicine and a poison is in the dose. The difference, between a seasoning, a spice, and destroying the soup is in the amount of it that you use. So, right. So
that's
go
right.
ahead. So what do they have
I
to
love
do?
that point. I love that point. Well, one, to your point, and this is the challenge with the apps, right? You so you don't know what headspace or heart space the person on the receiving end of that DM, you don't know where they're at. Okay. So I have clients that, for instance, said, "Oh, I comment and say, hey, are you busy saving lives today? Blah, blah, blah." And then, she wrote back and said, "How the heck did you know? How do you know that I worked in, medicine and this and that?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And then she's
You
like,
got
got
an
really,
MD after your initials.
yes, yes,
What the fuck?
yes,
He dodged a bullet. She helped him dodge a bullet. Honestly,
totally,
if that's
totally,
going to be her response, then honestly, fuck her. He dodged a bullet with that one.
totally. And that's a great point, Darcy, which is that, just like in real life, you can't take these things personally. You want to do what you do out of like good faith and positive intent. And, you don't, there's a temptation to over engineer all of it. There's
Yep.
certainly, guidelines that you can follow. They're definitely going to increase the likelihood of you matching and,
Yep.
connecting with really wonderful people online. That being said, you have to be careful because there's always outliers. Like, so one of the challenges that a lot of my male clients have is that on one hand, they're like, women are saying that I'm asking them out too quickly. So then they wait and they take a little longer. But other women at the same breath with the same number of
The
messages will say,
window closes.
yes, yes. So everyone's different. So you just have to be careful about that. So there's a part of it you want to maintain a lot of authenticity, obviously, but be willing to be flexible in your approach. And you've got to
Yeah.
try a lot of different things before you figure out what really works and feels right for you. But you do need to be flexible.
For sure. And I love what you said. What it works in real life is not necessarily going to work on a dating app. I do like a little humor and sarcasm.
Hey.
I mean, ball busting is my love language. I don't feel safe in a relationship if you're not busting my balls a little bit. I love to be teased. I don't like being the brunt of a joke. I know the difference between, are you fucking with me or are you loving me?
All right. You want to go to the next question? All
Let's
right,
do
next
it.
question. Oh, this is a good one. So, why do women sometimes pull away after great sex? Hmm.
Okay. I am not going to lie. I had no idea that this even happens. I had to literally look it up to make sure it wasn't just like five guys that follow me on IG wondering this.
Mm.
Um, I I don't even have the words. I can't relate to this because it runs counter to everything I know about women. It does. It will just leave it there. It runs counter to everything I know about women. But it turns out this is a thing. And it's one of those things that could have half a dozen explanations. So my question to you, Robert, is how deep do we go on this? And is this something that you're familiar with? Maybe start with that one.
Pun intended there, huh? Yeah. I would say, yeah, for sure. So, what I know for sure is guilt or shame, often self-protection. So self-protection can be a big part of this, right? For lots of reasons. So one is, if it's, and the key word there is great sex, right? So if it's really great sex, there can be a fear that they're going to fall for you. I think it's just literally true, right? They're going to fall for you. There might be, on the other hand, concern that they don't like you that much, but the sex was great, and now they're not feeling so great about that disconnect. It's like, the sex was great. I'm not sure how I feel about the person. Maybe that I don't think that's less likely. The other is guilt, right? It could be religious guilt. be other kinds of guilt, particularly if who knows what else the woman's got going on. She might be in a relationship, she might be married, she might, who knows what, or shame, right? Or embarrassment even. Sometimes embarrassment is a big deal. It doesn't, you don't think of it that way, but like,
Like,
you know,
cause
when you have,
she did it dirty? Like, what is she
yeah,
embarrassed of?
well, there's a lot of vulnerability, right? There's a lot of vulnerability that happens. So if it's really great sex and she's really enjoying herself, she's probably going to be lost in the moment, and she might make sounds or say things or do things that she otherwise wouldn't have done or said,
Okay.
right? And now she's feeling some embarrassment or shame or even guilt around that stuff and kind of afraid to face you again. So those are the few things I know for sure, based on the experience, whether it's personal experience or professional experience. But I've heard people literally admit that. Yeah.
We're gonna keep it pro, Robert. We're
Yeah, it's
just
kind
gonna
of
say that
like,
it's pro.
I'll
The
get
other
this
piece
friend.
is like, yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing is that women pulling away after great sex. I mean, because if she pulled away, can you ever actually be sure that it was great sex? Like, how do you know that it was great sex that caused her to pull away?
Yeah, it's a good
Because
point.
she's not talking to you anymore. You thought it
That's a good
was
point.
great sex, but like, does that mean it was great sex? I don't know. I get caught up in semantics.
That's also a great point. And I think that, probably historically men have gotten that one wrong more often than they've got it right, right? They just assume. So yes, I would say that in some cases, like particularly cases where it's like a friends of benefits situation, right? So in those situations
Mm-hmm.
because suddenly maybe you're still friends, but you're not having sex. And maybe you have a really open, honest relationship from the beginning. It's just a person who's very forthright, very honest with you, maybe to the point of even being a little bit brutally honest. So when they say something, there's no reason for them to hide behind the truth because there's nothing they're trying to save at this point. So I'd say that in those cases, it's easier to know. But you're right. I mean, here's the other part, right? The other part is, you know, you can really only know a person as deeply or as well as they know themselves. So,
Yes.
right? Like, so sometimes people pull away. They don't even know why they pull away, and they think
Right.
it's for X, but really it's for Y,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, what do you think, Darcy? Have you ever heard this before?
No, I have not. But I will. But
It only exists
but
in
I will.
men's heads.
But I will. I have not. I can't relate to it professionally or personally. I don't understand it. If anything, I would be chained to the best sex of my life, which I am. I married it. So, like, I don't understand this. I will tell you what the research shows is that
Mm,
sometimes sex triggers closeness that feels overwhelming, especially if someone has avoidant attachment tendencies or if they're scared that it means more than they want it to. It's less about the quality of the sex and more about what intimacy brings up afterwards, attachment dynamics.
that's great. That's great. I've heard
And
that. Does that revolve around oxytocin and hormone? Is it an oxytocin related thing? Right? Because isn't that part of it or no?
not necessarily,
Hmm.
not necessarily. I mean, if, according to the research, my interpretation of the research is that if it is mind boggling sex, a woman can feel, I suppose anyone could feel like, oh fuck, I was just looking for a hookup. Like,
Mm,
and now what does this mean? So they might retreat because of that. They might also, especially, women with avoidant tendencies, intimacy can feel very overwhelming. And sex, we know, heightens closeness, especially yes, so that's what you're talking about, right?
yeah.
The
Yeah.
oxytocin that comes from
Hmm.
orgasm. You got to give me like the basic words, Robert. You're like, does the orgasm foster bonding? Yes, the orgasm in women fosters bonding, and the pull away can be a way to regulate that intensity.
Mm. So pro tip, fellas, when she ghosts you, just tell yourself it was such great sex. She just couldn't stand it any longer. She couldn't stick around. She's gonna fall for me. Such a guy thing. Great summary there, Darcy. That's really yeah. I gotta say, I haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about this one or entertaining this one. I mean, I didn't even know this was such a big thing, but apparently it does exist. So it's good to know. And there's some research behind it too. So thanks for sharing. All
There's
right.
also research that underscores the vulnerability hangover, particularly if people are engaging in sexual acts that are not within their norm. So they got a little nasty in bed
Mm.
and they have a vulnerability hangover the next day. just as you said. And so that retreat could also be because they said or did something that you didn't have the connection that would make them feel safe to do or say.
Mm, really, really helpful. Love that. Final question. What's the fastest way to get over a breakup after 40? Hmm.
There are no shortcuts, but there are smarter ways to move through it. Um, for starters, don't be lesbians. Okay. Don't try and be a lesbian. Lesbians, we break up, we try to stay best friends immediately. We're not into pauses. We don't pace ourselves. We and it's a problem. So you have to start by cutting off contact. You have to stop the cycle. You have to build in some structure to your life, structure around sleep, structure around exercise, work, and connection. So for a lot of straight men, their primary intimacy and connection happens through their partner. This is a nice reminder to encourage you to build outside intimate friendships so that your partner is not all you got. And you have to make plans to see people. So it doesn't matter that you were like MIA for a year, 6 months, or 2 years, however long it's been. You have to call up your friends or text them, obviously. Nobody uses the phone anymore. And you have to make plans. You have to make plans. Grieve, but don't isolate. And reframe a breakup at this age. I know that it can feel brutal, but they're also very clarifying. Breakups at this age can show you what you will and won't settle for, which can make your next relationship better and healthier. So oftentimes people imagine a breakup at that age as being like, oh, I got to do this all over again. You get to do it all over again. You get to work on yourself in between now and the next one so that you don't repeat the same mistakes, and you get to show up different to the next one. And I'll tell you, if every breakup was her fault, we've got bigger problems than you know and than you think. And you got to do your own work. You have to. What do you think, Robert?
Oh, facts, facts. Agreed on that. Tiny mic drop. I would, yes. That sort of the challenge with breakups, there's many of them, but one of them is sort of, I think people try to understand what was the cause of it and what role they played in it. Ideally, you think about that a little bit. Um, Now, the challenge is we're often victims of that as well, which means that we all have like thinking errors, like cognitive biases and things that we do, right? So like one thing I've noticed is like some people romanticize the past or their partner, the one that they just left or the one that just left
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yep.
Other people, right? And that usually the folks that struggle the most are the folks that romanticize the past relationship and catastrophize the future ones, right?
Yes.
And so I've seen a client, I would not necessarily recommend this, although I have seen it work, where they just turn that around. They say, and I'm not a big fan of, advocate of negative thinking, but this is one of the places where it could be very helpful, where they do just the opposite. They begin to catastrophize the past and they romanticize the future, right? Meaning that they stop looking backwards and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm never going to meet someone like that again, and I'm the worst person on the planet." And she was and then they look into the future and say, they turn that around. So I had one client who said, "Whenever I think and begin to feel bad about having broken up with this person, I remind myself of all the tough moments we had, the arguments, and that suddenly helps me snap out of it. Now that doesn't
Yep.
work for everyone, right? But the
No.
idea here, to Tarshi's point, is, it's a science behind it, yes, but it's also something you can want to personalize, which is how can I think about this relationship, my past and my future and my life in a way that's truthful but better feeling. Like that's the work. And if I can't do that, if I can't find a way to think about it in a truthful, better feeling way, let me not think about it at all. Let me just feel the feelings without adding any
Yeah.
judgment, any color
Mm-hmm.
commentary, any criticism or condemnation. I'll just feel it wherever it is in the body as it is without any mental, discussion around it or discursiveness around it, right? And I'll just process it so much more quickly. So I think the challenge with most folk, most of us is that we think we're processing it. We call ourselves processing the experience or the relationship or our feelings, but we're just feeding them. We're just feeding the pain. We're just making the pain more painful by reliving it or pre-living it, going back into the stories and even explaining to ourselves or others why we broke up. That's okay for a short period of time, particularly with your therapist. But if you find
Mm-hmm.
yourself doing that a lot, you're just, in a way, you know, digging up this grave and
You're
you're
literally lighting up the same neural networks
boom.
that were lit up when you had the terrible breakup. And to my point, half hour ago, this is why I don't like to complain. This is why I don't
Mm.
like to bitch. I don't discharge my emotions that way. I discharge my emotions by working out, by drumming, and by strategizing. Don't even ask about that thing in the middle. I'll tell you about that another time. I'll tell you about that another time. But I get it out of my body through physical activity and a cognitive exercise of committing to do things differently the next time, or what can I do differently? I feel empowered through that. Um, and when clients come to me, oftentimes a client will come to me after a breakup. They don't want to make the same mistake again the next time, or they're wounded and they need help healing. The first thing I do before those wounds are healed, I do a relationship audit. We peel back that onion, every layer, you know, because I don't want them to repeat the same mistakes. I want them to get the correct takeaways. And that way, in the relationship audit, which is really nothing more than a retroactive examination of what went wrong, the role that you played, my client, what went wrong in the relationship, what do you think the other person did wrong, and what can you do differently? What can we either develop in you, or what can you yourself commit to doing differently in the next relationship so you make new mistakes?
Mm. That's so good, Darcy. You're right. It's you didn't fail. You just got feedback.
It's
Yeah.
data.
And
Yep.
data points are very helpful because they point you in a new, fresh direction where you don't have to repeat the past mistakes. That's powerful. I love the relationship audit. It's a great
Yeah.
analogy for it too.
Yeah. I mean, it just like apply the business. They tend to work
Well,
with people who are like very business oriented. So you just apply the business language. And it's kind of the way I think about it. It's like you're gonna reflect back, and you got to figure out what your role was. Because if everything in life is someone else's fault, you have no power.
mm,
No
mm,
power. You're gonna leave your next great love up to a coin flip.
yeah.
That's the likelihood. In marriage, you've already decided to commit. In first marriages, which have the lowest likelihood of divorce, it's a 50-50 coin flip. The research changes. Sometimes it's, 51, whatever the other number percentage would be of 51. I don't know. Is it 49? I don't know. I'm good with
Yeah.
language. Good with language, not with numbers. Um, and that's first marriages. With every subsequent marriage, the stats on divorce becomes more likely because you've already done it once.
Wow.
And so you don't want to leave your next great love up to the likelihood of a coin flip, or worse. You want to make sure, because relationships that don't lead to marriage, they break up with even greater frequency. They end even easier. So if a first marriage is like a coin flip, then ending a relationship's probably even easier. You have a greater likelihood than not of not working out. And we can all look at our relationship histories to say, gee, how many people did we marry? How many people did we date? Okay, if those numbers are different in proportion, then we know that we're more likely to break up without a long-term commitment. So the point is, after that long-winded explanation, that if you don't identify what you did wrong or what you could have done better, and it can't just be finding the red flags. That's bullshit, you guys. That's total horseshit. Sometimes a client will come to me and like, I will spot the red flags sooner. Nope, that's not the answer. We're going to look deeper. We're going to look deeper. It
That's
just
good.
can't be that, you know?
Darcy, that's so good because to your point, it's not about the red flags. It's what drives you underneath that to either intentionally overlook the red flags or in some case chase the red flags. You love the red flags. At some level, you love those red flags, you know.
They're so hot,
Yeah,
Robert. Don't
so
ruin it.
hot. That toxic
Don't ruin
person's
it
so
for
hot.
us.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
there's
Right.
nothing hotter than the most toxic partner.
It's
For
a great quote,
real.
right? Yeah, you nailed
Oh,
it. So it's like that. What is that? I guess Carl Jung. We've all heard the quote, but until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll dictate your life, and you'll call it fate. Oh no, I'm just fated to. Just the way it is. Women. And that's also, you always hear that when people folks say all women are like this, or all men are like this. You just can't trust them, or you just can't. There's no good women out there. There's no good men out. It's like that's always a good sign that we've got something going on inside of us that we're
yep.
projecting out into an entire population of people, right? So love that point, Darcy. The relationship audit thing is such a great point. Is there anything else you wanted to share there in terms of getting over a breakup after 40?
I think the path out of it is just knowing that your best chapters can 1,000,000% be ahead of you. They should be ahead of you. You should have made your worst mistakes by now. And the fact that this one didn't work out, good, whatever. I was going to say good for you, good riddance. Like just let it be and just commit to doing it better and different the next time. That'll give you a future orientation, which will give you much greater happiness. Robert is a happiness expert. He can certainly speak better to this than I did, but I think you already alluded to it. And you have to structure yourself. You're going through a major life transition with a breakup. You've lost your major attachment person, your major
Yeah.
attachment object. And so we call it object. But your person, the person you're closest to, you've just lost. Your body doesn't know if it's a breakup or a death. And your body's going to respond to this loss. So you need to dial up the self-care, and you need to take care of yourself, and you're not a pussy, and you're not every other negative word that we give straight men for taking care of themselves. You're smart, and you're healing, and you're appropriately nurturing and protective of yourself.
I feel like that should be turned into a meditation. We can all play at night. Just hear your voice repeating that, Darcy. Seriously, I love it. So good. And your voice was so calming as well when you delivered it.
But it usually is not. It's usually this New York shrieky, raspy thing that is
Yeah.
the last thing that anybody needs to hear at night in a loop of
I,
meditation. But
I,
it's true.
I don't know what it says about me, but I find it comforting. So one other thing I want to say
Oh,
that I do, there's something else that I want to just, that point you made is such a powerful one, Darcy. And I don't want us to overlook it, which is that look, even if you don't think it's true, that your future can be great and will be great, there's no reason to entertain any other belief but that one. Every other belief will only lend itself to a lackluster future, to a future that you don't. There's no good reason to entertain any other belief than that one. Ellen Langer would be so proud, Darcy. Ellen Langer, by the way, is a Harvard researcher, and she does a lot of work around mindfulness, which is noticing new things, and also around just thoughts and beliefs and age priming. And that's the other point I wanted to make here too is, I think we tend to make a big deal of our ages, and it's fine to honor whatever age you might be, but also be careful, because what you think about age causes you to age, right?
yep.
So it influences or informs how quickly you age. So,
Hmm.
these beliefs that you have about what has to happen after 40 or after 50 or after 60, it's all made up. It's all nonsense. And just because a lot of people are living that doesn't make it true. It just means that we've made it true by believing it. So be careful of that. And more than anything else, try to encourage yourself and others to think supportive, constructive thoughts about yourselves and other people in the world. I promise you, it's not going to do anything other than improve your health, the health of relationships, the health of your body, the health of your finances. That's what we do know from the happiness research out there in the world. So, Darcy, thank you for sharing that.
I love that. Thank you. And my last question for you, Robert, is where can people learn more about you?
Boy, hopefully always in conversation with Darcy at somewhere at some point, someplace.
Well, I just
Also,
hooked you in for another episode, so that's
good,
absolutely
good.
going to happen. Yeah.
You watch out. I'll be right up there with you and Steph. And
We're going to do
Yeah.
that dating episode next.
Oh, I love that. Let's definitely do that. I really look forward to that. You can find me at coachrobmack.com in the interim. You can also find me on most social media platforms, probably most consistently Instagram at Rob Mack, M-A-C-K official. And you can find both my books, Happiness from the Inside Out and Love from the Inside Out, everywhere great books are sold, including Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Robert Mack, I sincerely fucking love you. Thank you for being here
I
with me today.
adore and love you, Darcy, so much. Thank you for having me.
What a love fest. We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering is by Bartley Gall. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Christiani and Robin Gentian. If you're watching this on YouTube and you got something out of this episode, do me a solid and please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you, my friend, have come to expect. References are always linked in the show notes. I'll see you soon.